Hey guys, it's Mike Monty, one half of Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast. And we want to reach out to all the fans out there who have supported our show to say thank you. Thank you for making 2021 one of our best years. And one of our best years was because of Anchor. Anchor, the way that you can have your voice heard. You can be just like us. Record your own podcast. Use the Anchor tools to edit your podcast. Use it on a phone. Use it on your computer. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And best of all with Anchor, they're totally free. So be just like Long Island's #1 pro wrestling broadcast, Monty and the Pharaoh. We're looking together for a great 2022. We've got huge guests coming on board. Oh, yeah. You probably wonder why Jimmy's not here right now. Well, he's prepping for one of the best interviews we're about to have, and we're going to surprise someone with. So hang aboard with us, and don't forget, be like us and use Anchor.
APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your security needs. Call 631-390-9050. That's 631-390-9050. APB.
You need a body shop? You need engine repair? Auto Excellence, Collision Specialists, 631-261-6420. That's 631-261-6420. Auto Excellence.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with episode 3 of Stay Frosty with your host, my man Ricco Ross.
What's
great
up,
to
brother?
see
How you doing?
Like I say, man, every day's a blessed day, my man. What can I say? Always love, less is more. I live by that adage, man. Less is more.
And it's so true.
Yes, sir. So, man, we were tracing your filmography the other day. We got up through your story working with Whitney Houston on her music video, Saving All My Love for You. And then I was like, wow, man, because I really didn't know you to do like a bunch of comedy work, like comedy films. But I did come across the film called Spies Like Us that you did, which had Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase in it. And I don't know, like, explain your role in that, man. At that era, those two were kings of comedy.
They were at the height of their career at that time, and the director, he was going through some really serious stuff. He had directed a film where Holton, I can't think of his first name, William Holton, had an accident with a helicopter and ended up getting decapitated. And in Hollywood, they were litigating this issue and finding out whether they could actually hold the director responsible for it. And the outcome of that was coming down right at the time when we were shooting this film. And I remember he was particularly really worried. John, the director, was really worried because he didn't know how it would come down, and it could change his future. It could change his future, and it could change the future for all directors because of the responsibility. If you could be liable because you were the director and something like that happened. It was a kind of tense time for the director. And there was one scene in the movie, I played this character. He was kind of like special force security, and I take Dan Aykroyd and Chevy to this bunker underground, and when we get into the bunker, there is an explosion that takes place. And I remember we're setting up for this explosion, and back then they didn't have these little cameras, right? They had these big cameras that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars with the lenses and all that. And I remember they said this explosion is going to be pretty big, and they were going to take this. I said in the earlier episode that I did like doing a lot of my stunts, but there are certain stunts that I just didn't want to do. This is one of the stunts I wanted to do, and so they attached a rope to me. They were going to have this explosion. The rope was going to yank me and give the illusion that I'm being blown away, and then I would land on this pad behind me. So we're lining up for that, and then they bring in this big plexiglass screen to protect the camera. And I'm thinking, hold up, there's no plexiglass in front of me, and yet you're putting it in front of the camera. And they say, well, listen, we're going to get the timing right. So we're going to yank you right out of danger just in time. And then the explosion will happen, and we'll make it look like it all happened at the same time. Well, it's just, all right, I'm going to have to put my trust in you. But that was the scariest moment for me on that film.
Well, I know, you are not only an actor, man, you're a filmmaker. Like, you're a writer, you're a producer, like, you've done other things in the business besides acting. So, like, my thing is, back in the day when you first started, everything was shot on 35 millimeter. It was all film stock. Today, for the most part, everything's digitalized. And I prefer the look of film myself because I'm an old school film buff. What do you prefer to shoot on? I mean, or to be part of, man? Do you prefer the old film look, the 35 millimeter look, or do you prefer the digital look?
I guess I'm kind of old school like you. I do really enjoy the old school look. There's something softer about it, the depth. But I have to say this as a filmmaker, digital is so much more convenient to play with. And that in itself makes it worthwhile. The other thing is, I mean, we shot a film called Do Something during the pandemic. And during the pandemic, there wasn't a lot of gathering. So we wrote this script, and it was to deal with civil unrest. And in the film, we had people filming themselves on their cell phone. And then we shot some scenes with real cameras, and we put it all together, and it worked out amazingly. So you can shoot a film. I mean, there are films that have already been shot on cell phones alone. So the Apple store has a class where they can teach you how you can buy these little lenses, put it on your phone, and shoot films with it. So it is a whole different ball game now. And it also, the other thing I like about digital, if we're not just going to talk about the look, is that the accessibility to it, because a lot of filmmakers now that are just young people with great ideas and a lot of energy, but no money can now join this process because you can make a film so cheaply now. And I remember I was with Lance Hendricks, and he was telling me that he was working with smaller filmmakers, and I was really preoccupied trying to get big films. I wanted the bigger the film, the more I wanted it. And he was telling me that these young kids, these young filmmakers, they have energy and they have ideas that are completely, for an artist, more interesting than some of these studio films. And he said that he really enjoys working with them. And the moment that a veteran walks on the set, what that does is it steps up the whole talent level of the film, and everything changes. And so he says it's not only that you're working on something that's really like fresh and artistic, but you are contributing to these new filmmakers, bringing them up. And that was enough of an argument to get me to do that. And I remember I had worked on, I think, 2 films. And the second film I worked on was a film about Batgirl. And I won, it went to the festivals, and I won Best Actor in it. And I was able, because it was a small independent film, I was able to play a role that I probably wouldn't have gotten cast in. I was playing the Joker in it. And the Riddler, I'm sorry, the Riddler. And because I'm so different from what we think of as the Riddler, I thought, well, I have to create this character now that is very different from what people are used to. But I still want it to be something that, at the same time, it's relatable to that character. So I came up with my own kind of idea of the Riddler, and I gave him this kind of mid-Atlantic accent, so that, because I think he's the Riddler is a kind of character that is very cerebral, and I wanted that to be the case, and I just thought this kind of mid-Atlantic accent would help in that respect. Then I brought in this young designer who she was really trying to get into film. I said, listen, I want you to be the person that the stylist, and to style me for this role. And she came up with this great idea, and it just worked. I mean, the character looked like I wanted it to look, like I imagined it. As different as I am for that role, the stylist created a style that was as different as well. And I think when we put all those talents together, that's why I won Best Actor for the role, is because these young people, they don't have a lot of money, they don't have really long resumes, but what they do have, they have great ideas, and they have the energy to implement those ideas. So yeah, I remember I had a great time working on that film, Spies Like Us. And whenever you work with comedians, I mean, it's going to be fun, because there's a lot of downtime in filmmaking. As the saying goes, you rush to wait. And when you're working with comedians, during that waiting time, they make that time, a really enjoyable time to kick it. So I had a good time on that film.
So playing the Riddler, and you did another comic film. Well, this was actually a TV series you did back in the day called Doctor Who. Are you a comic book fan? Like, do you enjoy comic superheroes, those type of films? Is that, you like that, prefer that genre? Is that one of your favorite genres? Or?
Well, I think if I had grown up with it, I would have. But I grew up on the south side and west side of Chicago. Very poor family. We didn't partake in reading a lot unless it was homework. Whenever we had free time, we were out in the streets playing sports or whatever. But we didn't read a lot. And I think I really probably would have enjoyed comics books if I had been introduced to them at a young age. I was never introduced to them at a young age. I didn't really get into them until I started doing these sci-fi cons and start seeing how people were so excited about them. And I started understanding why they were excited about them. I also were able to appreciate how these comic books can come across as just a little comic book, but a lot of times there were so many futuristic concepts that came out of comic books, long before they became reality. And so I was able to appreciate them for that aspect as well.
So before you did like a Doctor Who series, being not familiar with comics, really not familiar with comics, do you stop and research that story to become familiarized with who Doctor Who is? Like, or do you just go through the motions of doing that role? Like, what do you suggest actors do? Like, if an actor's let's say if they're part of a franchise, but it's not the beginning of a franchise. It's like the middle part of a franchise. Do you think it's advantageous for that actor to go back and read that original story from where that franchise developed from, just so they're more familiar with the role they're playing? Or how do you suggest they do that?
I got to tell you, Tim, it depends on the individual. There are some actors that they, after they do a couple takes, they would like to look at a take because they can see things in their performance that they can improve. There are other actors that they don't want to see their takes because then they'll start becoming self-critical of their performance, and they'll start third eyeing themselves. And I remember I was working, and I'm kind of more of the latter, where I don't really want to see a lot of my stuff while I'm doing it because I really want to just be. For me, when you do stage, you're acting. When you do film, you're being. So if I'm in a scene on a play where I have to be angry or happy, I show that because I have to. The person in the first row has to see it, and the person in the 20th row has to see it. So I show it. Whereas if I'm in a film and I have to be angry or happy, that emotion is something that I just think of. I create that emotion so it is real for me, and the camera picks it up. I don't have to show it. I just have to be it. And so that's the way I look at it. And when it comes to a project that I haven't heard of, like I had heard of the Doctor Who series, but I wasn't a fan of it. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to do my research to know enough about it so that I understand what the tone is on set of these characters of the project, but not so much where I feel like I'm trying to copy something. You know, I want to come in there and I want to be genuinely this character. And this character that I played there, it was called the greatest show in the galaxy was the story that I was on, and that story 4 episodes. So I was in 4 episodes for that, and my character was the ringmaster. So when you go to a circus, you know, there's one guy that's controlling everything. He has the whip. He's the presenter. He's the MC and all that. That was the character that I played on there. And because at that time, rap was such a hot thing, and it just happened to come out, they had written a rap for me. And I was going to rap during my intro. And it was so new at that time. So they sent me this rap, and I read the rap, and it did not work for me the way I wanted to. Having studied Shakespeare, you learn a certain tempo. You learn how something should scan, and rappers do it all the time. They find a way to make this rhythm work with their lines. And when they sent me the script, it did not work for me. It might have worked for the writer, but it didn't work for me. So we went back and forth until we were able to make this rap work for me. And once I was able to make it work for me, I felt like, okay, that is the big hurdle to get over. Now the rest of it, it's all mine because the guy's a showman and I'm an actor, and you know, put us on stage and put a mic in front of us and we run like the wind. So that was a big challenge for me, and it was the opening, one of the opening scenes where he's rapping, and this guy he's kind of like the lead character pushing the story, but he's also kind of like a slight villain. So I had to kind of like blend that in where you're likable, but at the same time, there's something about this character that you may want to be careful around him. So that was, you know, creating that character and making it mine. It was easier because there wasn't a character before me. This was a character that no one had ever seen before. So I was able to walk in there, create this character, and now that is the character. I had no idea how big the show was until afterwards. I had no idea how big the following was, and I had no idea the longevity would be, so much so that even today they're still performing episodes, creating episodes for this show.
Yeah, one thing I didn't realize until recently was that you did so much television work in the early part of your career. As an actor, did you have a preference, or do you have a preference as it regards to film or television?
Oh, definitely. I have a preference, but that's kind of a difficult question to answer because with television and commercials, they have a tendency often to cast a person just as they are. You know, they don't want you to come in here and create some character where you walk with a limp and you speak with an accent. They pretty much want you to be you when you walk in the door. And in Hollywood, we have a different kind of approach because actors will walk into the door for the interview even and try and embody that character. In England, I found it very different because there were auditions where I would have meetings in England and they would look at my resume and we would talk about the character and then they would say thank you, and I would never read for them. And their way of thinking is that if you've done this much work, if you've worked with Cameron, Kubrick, De Palma, then we know that you can act. What we want to know is that, are you the type of person that's going to be easy to communicate with, to take directions? Do you have that type of personality, or are you going to be the type of person that's going to make it difficult for us to get a performance out of you? And during that conversations, when I'm in England, I found that during that conversations, they got enough information from me to know, okay, he's the type of person that we can work with. He's creative. He knows the project. One of the things I always do when I get a script is I read the script twice. The first time I read the script, I read it to get the storyline. The second time I read the script, I read it from my character's point of view. And in doing so, sometimes I discover things that even the director hadn't discovered, or even the writer hadn't thought about. Or maybe it's just me adding my creativity to it and coming up with something that I can tweak to the character or add to the character. So I would go in to these meetings in England, and by the time we finished the conversation, they knew I knew this character. They knew I knew this character and probably knew this character better than they knew the character. So often I wouldn't be asked to read. Whereas here in Hollywood, it's very rare. The only time I'm not asked to read is when someone calls my agent and says, "Is Ricco available for these dates?" But other than that, when I have a meeting, they usually want me to read. They want to see what you can do. They want to see how you're going to do this character. There's a lot depending upon each project. There's a lot of money involved, and they don't want to take chances. So they want to see you say the words. And I don't like that because I always feel like when you have an audition, you're doing this audition, you're not getting paid for the audition. You're doing this audition. And so you do a lot of auditions that nothing ever materializes with. So as an artist and as a professional, you have to really have the discipline to put the time in, the energy in, the effort in to making this audition like a performance on screen. But it's never going to make it. I always feel like it's the best analogy is it's like taking a turkey that needs to be baked for 2 hours in the oven and just microwaving that baby and then saying, here you go. That's what it feels like to me when I go on auditions, because I know that when I'm booked for the job, now I'm gonna go deep into this project. I'm gonna go deep into my characterization of this project. I'm gonna have conversations with the director, bringing up ideas that I have, where we can talk about it, and or maybe with the writer, clarifications of some things that wasn't explained in the script that we can talk about. And by the time I finally get on screen, you know, I got it now. I'm with it, and I know this character like the back of my hand. Whereas in an audition, I never feel like I reached that point. So I prefer the English style of doing it. I think they give a lot more credit to the artist than they do in Hollywood. But you have to, you know, if you can't change the game, you better learn how to play it. And so when I'm here, you know, I have an audition. I had an audition. They wanted me to do a self-tape for this character who is a tap dancer. And I started off as a dancer first. I was a dancer before I was an actor, really. Professionally, I'm talking about. So when I had to do this role as a dancer, he's a great tap dancer, the character. And I remember the first thing I wanted to do was put some hard shoes on, get on my wood floor, and start doing some cramp rolls, some pullbacks, you know, some butterflies, and just getting myself back into it. So then when I did the audition, you know, even though they didn't ask me to do any dance in the audition, he's basically just finished dancing in the audition, and then he's talking to kids, giving them some kind of a pep talk. So I chose to actually do some tricks just at the end of the dance, and then I talk so they can see that I know this area, and and we shot it. Not only did I shoot it, but I brought in a director to direct me in this, and for him to shoot it. So I had his input, and he wanted to do a couple locations, whereas normally I would just have a blank wall and I do the audition. But this was a role where you're playing a real person, and that person is still alive. And if I'm going to play that person, I wanted to do that person justice. And if I'm going to do that, I thought, well, let me just show it in the self tape. And so I took that audition to that level of trying to get it right.
That's delivering more than what they expected. That's the way you razzle and dazzle auditions, man. Casting directors, they love that. When the actor really gets into that role, they live the role. For me personally, man, that's the way London does things, the way North America does things. Is the difference between night and day. I think the political industry of auditioning is just that. It's a political industry. And a lot of times producers already know who they're going to hire before you step foot through the audition room. Man, you could bring your A game and think you knocked it out of the park. And it doesn't really matter like what type of performance you bring into that room. If the producer's girlfriend they're on good terms, he's going to cast his girlfriend to play the lead. That's the way that goes.
Or niece, or yeah. Hey, the film I did a film called Dirty Dozen that we were talking about before with Lee Marvin, and Ken Wall was one of the dozens. And Ken Wall told me this. He said, Ken Wall had never taken an acting class before in his life. He said, as a matter of fact, the first film I did, he said, I played the lead in, and I had never done a job before, not a play, not a commercial, nothing. And I said, well, how'd you get the job? He says, I had an uncle that was in the mob. And so he says, that's how I got the job. But Ken is a natural. Ken Wall was a natural. We were working on Dirty Dozen, and he and I were talking in the film. And we had a scene together, and we were just talking and talking. And then the director says, okay, we're ready to shoot. And so we stopped talking, and the director says, action. And Ken started talking because that was his cue to go. And he started talking, but he was so natural that the director thought that we were still just chatting, and says, cut, I said action. And Ken was like, those are the lines. And the director was like, oh yeah, you're right. But he was that natural. Now, how Ken would fare on stage, I don't know. But when it comes to film, he was very good. And so that kind of changed my view on actors because I was trained as a trained actor in college, and then I went to grad school at UCLA, and went through grad school and was trained even further as a college. And I went to school with some really famous people who are famous now, and Tim Robbins, Shane Black, who wrote
Predator,
Predator and Lethal Weapon. A lot of guys and girls that have really done well since then. And I remember after that, I worked in Hollywood for a year. Then I went to England and studied the classics for a year and got further training. And so I had this thing where, I really thought you had to really be a trained actor to navigate this business. And then I met Ken Wall, and I realized, no, you don't. There are people who just have that ability to be themselves in front of a camera as if that camera isn't there. And so the conversation that we were having was completely believable, whether there was a camera there or not. And that's what acting is all about, is being believable. So it kind of changed my mind. I do believe if you do stage, it's a different story, because say for an example may be, if I'm on stage and I have to whisper, I would whisper, but the person in the 50th row has to hear that whisper too. So you have to use your diaphragm, you have to use a certain technique. Whereas if you're on film and you have to do you have to do a whisper, you just whisper, just like you would normally. So it's very different. And so I think Ken excelled in film. I don't know how he would have fared if he had been on the stage.
I think some of the best actors have a stage background and actually come from stage. But having said that, so okay, a lot of people are under the misconception that you do have to go to acting school if you want to be an actor. Have you, in your own personal experiences, have you learned more from acting school, or have you learned more from practicality? Have you learned more from being on set, actually having that hands-on approach?
I'll say this about acting school. You learn the business, so you're not walking on set completely oblivious of how things go. You also learn about character, about creating character. You learn how to work on your lines and learn your lines. You've been on stage and you've fluffed it, and you've figured out a way how to continue, because on stage there is no take two, cut, take two. No, you've got to figure it out right then. I was on stage once here in Hollywood. I was doing this play, and in the middle of a scene, I'm playing this guy who he's kind of like a Southerner, and this is this little bitty shack where people come to drink, right? And it's like a bar. And in the middle of the scene, I'm looking at the audience, and I see people pointing, and there's a huge light on the front row, and there's a gigantic spider slowly climbing down, and there's a row that he's climbing down to, and a lady sitting in the row where he's going to land. And the people from behind her were hitting each other's shoulders saying, "Tell that lady there's a spider coming down on her." And I see this happening, and I realize that the whole audience now are looking at this spider, and we've lost the audience. So I walk from the bar and I go, "Now look at there, a spider." They say the spider is a good look. And I grab the spider's web at the top, and I grab it, and I walk backstage, drop the spider off, and run and come back on stage and just ad-lib my way back on stage. And let me tell you something, if that spider had climbed up that damn web, I would have screamed like a bitch, because that was a big spider, man. But it didn't, and I did that. And when we got off stage, the audience came up to me afterwards when I came out, and they were going, "So how did you get that spider to do that?" Or, "Was that a real spider?" And all these questions, because they thought it was part of the play. And that's the kind of thing that you learn when you're in acting school, and when you have a theater background. You learn how to cope no matter what the situation is. On film, if something goes wrong, you'll hear cut, 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 cut. All right, take two. So on stage, you learn how to deal with any emergency right there. And that gives you a certain confidence. So maybe an actor doesn't have to go to acting school, but there's a confidence that you get once you go to that school, once you come out of school, that will help you when you walk in those auditions. And you walk in the audition thinking it's going to be one thing, and all of a sudden you talk to the director, he goes, "No, it's like this." Now you on a dime, you have to shift and make this thing work. And you only have a moment to make that adjustment. So acting school gives you practice at working those things out under pressure. And so I think it's a good thing because of the knowledge it gives you, the experience it gives you. But I don't think that, not every actor has to do it. There are some people that are just really good. Now, the flip side of having a theater background is that it can make things more difficult for you when you get in front of a camera. I have had cases where I've been in front of a camera right out of drama school, and the director's words were often the same thing: "Ricco, you're doing too much. Take it down a notch," or that sort of thing, or just say the lines. So I've had that happen as well, and I've seen other actors that come from a theater background come on stage and they're quote unquote acting. And when it comes to film, the one thing you never ever want to get caught doing is acting.
Right on. So I think that's actually really good advice for the young people who want to be in the business. So if somebody wants to be an actor, what's the best advice you can give them?
I would say, it pretty much depends on their age. I would probably give them different advice depending on their age. If they're a young person, I would say the thing I would advise you to do is to go on and look up 25 agents, right? And in those 25 agents, get their email or their address or whatever you can get, and you write them a one-sentence letter. And that letter might be, or email might be, hello, my name is John Doe, and I am looking for new representation. Here's my contact information. Send in a headshot, or maybe 3 headshots with 3 different types of look, and then wait for a call back or for them to contact you. Because what happens if you send out 20, 25 of them, you may have 3 of them that respond back that they're interested. And out of those 3, your job at that point is not to lose the job. It's not to lose that agent, because they're already interested in you. And the only reason that they're calling you in is because they see dollar signs in you. And so you need to walk in there knowing that your job is just not to blow this deal. So that's my advice. Send out 25 different agencies. If you and send them a 1-sentence letter, make it very short. You don't need to have to go about all your background and all this. Let them know you're looking for new representation. Now that to them says that maybe he's got or she's got representation already. They're looking for new representation. But it also may mean that they don't have representation. They're looking for representation. You don't have to explain that. What you want to do is you just want them to call you in. Once they get in, now you sell them. You sell them why they should pick you up. You're the type of person that's going to show up on time. You're going to show up prepared. You're taking this seriously. You're not doing this like half-ass or anything. And this is what you want to do. This is what you have to do. And send them 3 pictures. Nowadays, the phones are so good taking photographs. You don't have to even hire a photographer. You can go out and have a friend take different looks of you. You can take a look where it's more of a business look. You can take a look of somebody who's like the bad girl or the mean chick or the bad guy. And you can take have a shot where you're the guy next door or you're the girl next door. You send those 3 different looks in there, and you send that letter in there and your contact information, and you wait for a call back. If you don't hear a call back, you grab 25 more, do the same thing. And that's how you get it. Persistence is a really important thing in this business. I always say 2 of the most important things in this business is persistence and having thick skin, not taking things personally. When you go on an audition, when that young